You know, it reminds me actually of the first time I ever spoke in front of an audience like this. It was an unmitigated disaster. It was early in my career, and I was asked to do the year in review for our sister society and the year in review in lung cancer. And I went home and told my wife what a great honor that was. And she said, well, you'll be needing a new suit. And I said, a new suit? How about that blue blazer I've been wearing since my brother Mario gave me that in college? And she said, no, you'll be needing a new suit. So off I went and got a new suit, and I got home and she said, well, you'll need a pair of shoes with that suit. And having lost the suit battle, I went out and got the shoes. The morning of the lecture, I got up early, put all my slides together, pretty nervous, and it was about 10 blocks from the convention center. And I said, you know, I think I'll just walk. By the second block, my heels were killing me. By the 5th block, they were blistered. And by the 10th block, I literally had blood in my shoes. Despondent, anxious, I walked into the lecture hall, and of course, as luck would have it, there was a British speaker on before me, and God knows when they're speaking British English, it doesn't matter what they say, they sound fantastic. And so I crawled up to the stage, and the tech put on the lavalier mic, and he probably told me that the mic was live, but I wasn't paying any attention at the time. And so I walked up to the stage, or hobbled as it were, and I looked around, and they were switching slides, and I kind of turned around and saw my face on the screen and mumbled under my breath, but out over the full audience loudspeakers, man, you're going bald. So it didn't take me long to think about the topic for today, and it was always going to be about patience. And this is Wilson Thrower. And I met Wilson not here in the 1940s when he was on the USS Jenks in the Atlantic Fleet, and they shot down a German U-boat and boarded that boat not knowing whether it was booby-trapped, and received a presidential citation for that. I met Wilson and his family here when Wilson brazenly walked into my office with a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, and these two women, his wife of some 50 years and her sister, all living in the same home, all with severe emphysema. And Wilson immediately told me, I just fired the last pulmonologist, and I thought I'd give you, young buck, a shot at taking care of my people. I spent the next hour with both women in the same office, going over things, changing things, talking about pulmonary rehab, and I sent them on their way and said, come back in 6 weeks, and 6 weeks later they came back. And they were both doing better, and I was about to pat myself on the back, and this was in the year 2000, and I was young enough to think I was making a difference. And, you know, until the point in the interview where I got to their medication list. And it turns out that as I talked to them about their medications, they were completely different than I had written them for. Some doses were less, they were given at different times, and I looked at the women, I said, well, like, how did this happen? And they sheepishly looked over at Wilson. And so I said, Wilson, when did you get your MD degree? To which he immediately replied, when you guys stopped listening. And it really sort of resonated with me. I didn't want to be fired, and I only had one response to him, which is, hey, listen, Wilson, doctors don't smoke. But I let them leave the office, still not ready to give up. I went back to the literature, and I started trying to look up doses and medicines in small people, because Dot was about 100 pounds, only to find out that Wilson was actually right. There were papers in the literature that supported his contention that giving very low-dose dioflin, a drug we don't even use anymore, was important and could be used and help patients. And it made me start on this journey of thinking about what helps us to be a better doctor? What makes us learn? And what makes us take better care of patients? And for me, it's been a compilation of things, and I'm sure for this audience, it's the same sorts of things. The first thing is great mentorship. And I've been very, very lucky to have two amazing mentors. One who's sitting in the front row, Jim Jett, a world-famous lung cancer pulmonologist, and Stephen Spiro from the UK, the same for him. And both of them took me under their wing when I was very young, gave me opportunities I never deserved, watched over me, told me when I was wrong just as much as they told me when I was right. And they were always there. And there are mentors all over this meeting. I had the privilege of being with the past presidents yesterday. In the last 10 years, our past presidents have published over 1,500 papers combined. You know, it's unbelievable, and the best kept secret about our talent and mentorship in this meeting is they all love to teach. They love to be asked questions. And I would urge you to ask them questions. And in fact, it doesn't have to be an academic. It could be a seasoned partner in a private practice who you go to for sage advice. It also takes great colleagues, and I've been lucky enough to spend my whole career at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. This is our current faculty, but I'm going to name a few people that I started out with. Steve Son, who recently passed away, a world-class expert in the pleura. Mark Judson, a world-class expert in sarcoid. Charlie Strange, world-class expert in alpha-1 disease and also rare lung diseases. Nancy Collop, an expert in sleep. These people pushed me to be a content expert in lung cancer, but also allowed me to learn from them about how to take care of almost every other patient. It was an amazing place to grow up. And then there's the support of our medical society. And so we have this unbelievable medical society, and we kind of take it for granted. We have over 100 people serving over 19,000 of our members. And I've gotten to know a lot of them, and I just want to mention one thing. They get it. Their culture is that they get that we need to help educate our physicians and take care of patients. And a lot of them actually have personal family stories of people with lung disease, and so it makes it even more touching for them. And so they help us in a number of ways. The journal, they help us with the journal, practice guidelines, CHEST-Seek, board review, simulation, and our networks where we can meet people, like-minded people, and study diseases that we're interested in. I just want to mention guidelines because it's been a big part of my career. You know, this is just a few that I picked out. Look at these guidelines. Since 2012, they've been cited in the medical literature 5,300 times and downloaded 1.6 million times. People are interested in our guidelines, and we need to do a better job of making sure we get out practice guidelines to help you take care of patients. You need a supportive family. You know, I think a lot of times we take that for granted. But I can't do what I do. You can't do what you do without our families. And I'm lucky enough to have, yeah, my son's laughing right now. That's my son Nate, my daughter Mia, and my wife Joanne, who've always been there to make sure that I had whatever it is I need to take better care of patients. But before them, there were my 6 brothers and my sister, and my brothers made sure, even though our family really didn't have much, that I got what I needed to get through medical school, live in the basement of one brother's house and drive another brother's car, and of course get that blue blazer, which I have to this day. Let's get back to the throwers. Wilson, and now in 2003, 3 years into our relationship together, Dot got really sick. I mean, really sick, ICU sick. Didn't think she was going to make it. Had 2 alveoli loosely strung together. She got through that hospitalization, and I started to talk to her about end-of-life care. And we decided we'd go with hospice. And so I got hospice engaged and sent them to the house. 3 days later, I got a call from Wilson, said, Mary's really mad. She's really mad. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, you better get over here. So I stopped by the house, and I said, Mary, what's happened? She said, I fired hospice. And I said, what do you mean you fired hospice? You can't fire hospice. She said, I fired hospice. You want to know why, Dr. Silvestri? All they wanted to do was talk about death, and I'm not ready to die yet. And of course, just for Wilson's sake, she lived another 3 years. And Wilson never missed the opportunity to point out to me that, you remember 3 years ago when she said she was going to die? She didn't die. But in that 3 years, we were able to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary together. And, I know what you're thinking right about now. 19,000 members, right? Couldn't we have picked a smarter pulmonologist? But, 350 million Americans, and in 2 weeks, you see the 2 choices we have to elect for the real presidency of the United States. So I've been basing everything on a single patient, which is where I want everyone to focus. But we also have challenges that as a collective society we can engage ourselves in. I just want to point out what a great time it is to be a pulmonologist. And so, we actually care for patients in 3 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States, between lung cancer, which alone is the 5th leading cause of death, between COPD and emphysema and pneumonia. That accounts for 350,000 deaths a year, and we touch many of those, not even including the patients who end up in our ICU. So there's a ton of opportunity for us to be in position to help care for our patients. Tobacco is still the scourge of society, not just here, but globally. 1.3 billion smokers on this planet. 10 million cigarettes purchased every minute. 5 trillion cigarettes consumed annually. 1.7 new lung cancers, and that's likely underreported annually. 1.4 million deaths from lung cancer. So even though we take care of our individual patients, we've got to get involved and make sure that we're taking care of the whole. What are my goals? People have been asking me what my goals are for the next year. Well, I want to do everything I can to help you take care of your Wilson. You know, that's the most important thing for me. Some of the ways I'm going to try to help you do that are the increased production of our practice guidelines. I want to develop an app, and we're working on that so that it's an easy way for you to use the smartphone to get guidelines to care for your patients at the bedside. We have this academy of educators that will help us with curriculum development, and I want to see that further. Really going to introduce this new concept, which is I really want to further the mission of education with developing of another certification called a Master Educator for the College of Chest Physicians, MECCP. And our Master Educators, which are some of the 600 faculty here, deserve that recognition. And it'll be something that I want every member to work towards getting to help teach other faculty and their patients. I want to meet the educational goals of our global members. We're a global organization in 100 countries in the world, and they're clamoring for some of the things it is that we do. And I want to help us, and it's part of our strategic plan, to provide educational materials and education for our allied health professionals like nurse practitioners and PAs. They need what it is we do. They work side by side with us in our ICUs and elsewhere. So let's recap what it took for me to learn to be a mediocre doc. 2 mentors, 3 family members in my extended family, 25 or so faculty mates, 100 college staff with 19,000 members in 100 countries. And all that is to take care of Wilson. Now this is Wilson 2 years later. His wife died in 2006 at the age of 84. His sister-in-law died in 2012 at the age of 87. And this is us celebrating Wilson's 90th birthday. And it was what a great day that was for me. Wilson died a year later, and the night before he died, I was coming off the road somewhere, and I went directly from the airport to the hospice house where Wilson was. We sat in the hospice house together with his 5 children, and he was in a deep sleep, and we started reminiscing about all the different times we had had with Wilson, Mary, and Dot over the years. At some point in that, Wilson woke up, and they pushed me to the front of the bed, and I held Wilson's hand, and he opened his eyes and smiled a little bit, and he looked at me and he said, Doc, if I knew you were here, I just wouldn't have woken up at all. He winked, I cried. He died the next day. And a few days later, my family and I attended his funeral, and afterwards we went to the church hall, the same church hall we mourned Mary and Dot, the same church hall we spent with him on his 90th birthday. And family members kept coming up to me and saying, thank you, Gerard A, thank you so much. And really, it felt very uncomfortable because it was the other way around. I needed to thank Wilson for letting me be a part of his family's life. We need to thank our patients for ever so much restoring our faith in the nobility of medicine. We need to thank them for the honor it is to care for patients. And so what's my hope for you for the rest of this meeting? I want you to go out and find your Wilson. Find your Wilson, whether it be one thing you can take home from this meeting in the simulation or education center, one medication that might help one patient. I want you to huddle in a corner with your research buddies and ask big questions that maybe you could answer. I want you to do all those things. And in fact, I want it to be fun while you're doing it. So I urge you in the rest of the meeting, when you see a friend, go, hey, did you find your Wilson yet? Hey, let me help you find your Wilson. You know, let's make it fun for all of us. And so with that, I'm going to end my talk here. But I know there's one last thing you're wondering. Yes, new suit, new shoes. But it's only a 1-year term. Thank you very much.